just kind of wanted to get into the weeds about how y'all put together a strategy, an overarching strategy, and what you can plan for, what you can't.
I asked myself, well, am I willing to leverage for growth in a way that would cause us to go out of business when that next big recession hits?
We're going to try to ride this data center wave. We've got enough diversity that I think we can take on a substantial amount of that without being exposed too much in terms of the downturn.
Welcome to the Next-Gen Metal Fab podcast. I'm your host, Tim Heston. In each episode, I'll be joined by a rotation of co-hosts, Caleb Chamberlain from OSH Cut, Cody Lee from Everyday Technologies, and Lance Thrailkill from All Metals Fabricating. Together, we'll talk about what the future could look like for precision sheet metal and tube fabrication.
Want to level up your manufacturing or metal fabrication career? Fabricators and Manufacturers Association connects you with the education, training, and community you need to stay ahead. As an FMA member, you'll get access to exclusive resources, industry events, and a network of professionals who share your passion for making things better. Join today and start building your future in manufacturing at fmamfg.org. And now, back to the episode.
Hello, this is Tim Heston from the Fabricator magazine, Fabricators and Manufacturers Association, and thanks so much for joining us for this next episode of Next-Gen Metal Fab podcast. We've got Lance Thrailkill at All Metals Fabricating and Caleb Chamberlain of OSH Cut. How you guys doing?
Great. How you doing, Tim?
Doing great. Excited to be here.
We're recording this in November, and kind of a year in review and a year ahead. So kind of bring me through how 2025 panned out for you. Obviously, this has been kind of a tumultuous year, a lot of changes. So Lance, why don't you start out?
Yeah, it started out, it started out a little slow at the beginning of the year, and then it's kind of just been, flatlined all year in terms of sales. It's certainly tumultuous with the tariffs and navigating all that. So you're working a lot harder for the same amount of dollars. Meaning just, requoting, dealing with that whole communication pattern. And then unbeknownst to us, here comes fourth quarter and October, our WIP almost doubled. And so we've seen a big boom in the fourth quarter, which is not very normal for, sheet metal fabricators, because typically people are trying to keep their inventory numbers low going into the end of the year. And so it's been a great, pleasant surprise. So now we're actually, if we get out almost everything that we're supposed to get out, we'll beat our record year, much less if we get out everything we need to get out. So it's exciting.
What would have been those markets? I assume data centers, right? Because everybody's talking about data centers.
Yeah, a lot of data center work. And big shout out to Caleb and OSH Cut team. Super thankful for them. Every job shop in America should be using them for their quick turn work. We had our customer won a project for NVIDIA, and they needed a prototype, which was like 80 unique parts, varying from quantities of, what was it, Caleb, like 1 to 20 or something. There was even some that were more.
Yeah, thereabouts.
And OSH, something we could have never done. And OSH Cut got it done and shipped to us all in a week and a half or something like that across the country. And so they were able to test the prototypes and building production. So a lot of data center stuff. Telecoms picked up as well. We make RF chambers. There's been a big boom in RF chambers, which is not surprising because that's a CapEx investment for the end user. So wanting to get that in before the end of the year. Not surprising. That's understandable. But yeah, those are kind of the main three players, but it's been a lot of everything, really, quite frankly. I think maybe now that material pricing stabilized and, just general confidence is kind of back up, maybe that's some of it as well.
What operational changes have you made in the past year as far as, major milestones? Like, all right, we're gonna shift this, or has it been pretty steady throughout that you're kind of on cruise control?
No major. We focused this year on adding a 5-axis mill with a fully automated 5-axis machining center, and so that was our big investment this year. Trying to get getting lights out capability in our machine shop. We want to have automation in every department in the next few years, and so while we're navigating cut to bend solutions and who the right partner is with that, we figured let's go ahead and level up in our machine shop. So it's a big change that we've been evaluating ERP systems. We're trying to automate programming more, and so looking at making a switch on our programming software on the machine shops, or sorry, on the sheet metal side. And actually, I just left a trade show and bought Cloud NC, which is an AI based programming software for our machine shop. So really excited about that. Yeah, those are kind of the operational focuses of the year. Mostly due diligence on the ERP and the programming. We'll be looking to first change programming, then ERP. Programming probably Q1 of next year.
So you mentioned machine shop. So what's your strategy on that on expanding that machining capability and how that kind of fits into the sheet metal fab space from your perspective? Because like 5-axis, that's a jump up. Usually, every fab shop I visit, usually obviously you've got some traditional VMCs and all that kind of stuff, but to get to 5-axis, that's interesting.
Yeah, so it's yeah, to your point. I mean, most job shops you'll have a machine shop just for component parts, so you can do assemblies and not be dependent on outside sourcing. But that department, we've got some young guys that are hungry and wanting to just continually level up. So that department has really become its own business almost. We've got a good amount of work that just comes straight through there, and that's I think our biggest opportunity to grow just with our current floor plan. And it's a lot smaller, a lot more dollar parts. So a lot more high dollar parts. So we're looking to grow that business segment, and so this investment, using that to marketing and get a lot of press around that. We got the first Kitamira supercell for our job shop and Texas. So just trying to grow it. Yep.
Awesome. All right. Well, Caleb, tell us about your 2025. Nothing happened, right? Just absolutely quiet.
Yeah, nothing at all. No, Lance, we might have to hit you up on the 5-axis machining front. We've found that there's some complexity in the tooling supply chain for CNC tube bending, like draw bending, and we've talked about like buying our own equipment to try to make our own tools, just because like we need so many and the lead time's so long and the consumables take forever and they're expensive. It's pretty wild. Anyway, maybe a conversation for down the road.
Yeah, love that.
Yeah, 2025 has been wild, honestly. So for the past, we've been in business for 7 years, and for 5 of the last 7 years, we basically had plateaued on the number of new customers we were acquiring every month. And in January of 2025, that number jumped up massively and stayed up. And I'm actually not sure why. I mean, we changed dozens of things about our service. We made it by default a lot faster. We expanded our capabilities, especially with bending. Launched a bunch of enterprise-friendly purchasing flows, so we do support net terms and purchase orders, which we didn't before. I know that sounds maybe a little odd, but it was all credit card stuff, which was awesome for cash flow. But anyway, all that stuff together, plus probably a lot of macroeconomic things and political things, we just saw this surge in demand, and we've grown faster this year than we ever have in our entire history. So that's good. It's definitely stretched us operationally, though.
Good problem to have, but still a problem. That's what just sit under all hands. It's a good problem, better than the opposite problem, but it's still a problem.
Yeah,
it's abnormally challenging for us, I think, because we market heavily that we're an on-demand shop. Right on our website, on our main landing page, we say get parts like these as fast as 0 to 3 days. And that's true usually, but you kind of have to straddle this knife's edge of capacity versus like efficiency. Like it's really, really easy to ship really fast if you just have tons of excess capacity, but that's expensive. And on the flip side, if you're trying to like really optimize efficiency and just have the right amount of capacity for the work, then you can't promise a fast lead because you get these spikes in demand. And of course, nobody has a crystal ball. So, we're just stressed, like, do we hire more? Do we buy more machines? We want to be able to turn parts around same day, but like, it's hard to assume we're going to continue growing at this pace. It's hard to know hard to know where there's going to be an economic contraction when we're way overstaffed and way over equipment, have way too much equipment with high debt service. So yeah, it's a really balancing act. Like if we weren't advertising rapid leads, it would just be like, all right, well, lead time grows, and that's just the way it is. And we have a little bit of time to ramp up capacity when we feel comfortable. But yeah, when you advertise that fast turnaround, you've got to nail the capacity question, and it's hard.
Well, could you take a playbook from Amazon where you've got next day shipping, but you also could save the planet and wait 10 days? You always have and they always have that click saying, "Hey, save a few bucks and if you can wait." Or is it, no, that's not, because that's not what you do. That's not your focus.
Yeah, that's an interesting strategy. It is a catch-22 because you could really lean into the whole on-demand rapid angle and say, well, if we don't have enough capacity, it's just going to get more expensive. And we control capacity through cost, through price. And we haven't, not capacity, but controlled demand through price. We haven't done that just because we have most of our businesses repeat, and a lot of them are shops that rely on us and OEMs that rely on us. So we don't want to ramp up prices and destroy those relationships. Um, but yeah, elongating the lead time for a lower price, I mean, that might be a good flip side thing that helps. But the thing is when you play tricks with like elongating lead time, you're just kicking the can down the road. Like if we're shipping 10% of orders late right now because we're over capacity and we add a day to the lead time, then we get a little bit of breathing room for a while, and then we're shipping 10% late again as soon as we get past. Because there's only so much like future demand leveling you can do effectively. You're just like shipping everything late in 3 days instead of shipping everything late in 2 days, or however whatever percentage is going late. So
It's
um,
funny you say that because we like the customers that give us the longest lead time. Sometimes the jobs we fall on our face. It's like just naturally the system back schedules, right? So and it thinks you got wide open capacity. So as that date creeps in and that capacity fills up, like you've fallen behind. And it's that's what you said is very accurate.
yeah, yeah, production leveling is great in theory, but in practice, there's some psychology to it too. The people on the floor are like, oh, this job's not done due for another week, so I'm not gonna take this extra sprint and get all these parts done so they can sit on a shelf for a week. So, but then you come up and it's like due in 2 days. Lance, when you came to us with that big job, big for us, and said, well, how fast can you get it? Honestly, I was like, man, our scheduling systems aren't good enough for us to know whether we can get it out by any specific date. Like we can push the lead time out 3 weeks, um, but it's actually kind of hard to make sure it's prioritized properly along with the other 3,000 parts, 3,000 SKUs we need to make this week. Um, so in the end, honestly, all I did was I accelerated the due date. And I just said, all right, we're just going to get our best shot. I have no idea if we can do this or not.
Well,
Um,
you guys under promised and over delivered, so that was great. You
well,
beat it by a day or two. Uh,
I'm glad we got it out for you. It was a
yeah.
stretch. So
That's awesome. That's awesome. I did talk to, this is just a riff off that for a second, the scheduling aspect of it. I mean, I did talk to one fab shop that kind of, they delayed, they began delaying every job for as much as they could, order release, just to avoid customer revisions. Because they'd always get the customer, like they would always cut, or if they planned for capacity on the laser, then undoubtedly they'd have a customer revision, and so then they'd have to recut anyway, or have a greater chance of that. This happened for their product mix. It just depends on the product mix and the customer relationships you have, but for their kind of work, they delayed as much as possible and then cut, bend, weld out the door, and no whip, just that's it. How
yeah,
scalable that
that's good.
model is, I have no idea because it was a very small shop. So it's like they had a very niche customer base that they served. But it was an interesting concept for sure.
Well, I think the answer to that question, I wrote an article on this, but the answer is the bigger you are, the easier it is to do that. Because your demand doesn't scale, the volatility of demand doesn't scale as fast as the mean demand scales. So basically, if you have like 10 lasers worth of full-time work and you get an order in, it's way more likely to be able to be absorbed by that base load capacity, and then you just get it out the door. Whereas if you're a one laser shop, then it's really, really hard to absorb volatility in your base capacity.
Right, right, right. Because then because it's hard to have excess capacity when you have one laser. right?
Yeah. Yeah, and
So
the next capacity step is a doubling of capacity. So
right.
proportionally, it's actually a lot more expensive to add capacity the smaller you are.
Right. Definitely, definitely. So yeah, getting back to kind of the forecast. So Lance, 2026, well, what does it look like for you? What's the strategy?
In terms of forecast, we really kind of start that process more in December, meeting with customers, trying to get that. And that's even something new for us. I mean, we just historically have not really had that visibility. And that's something that as we try to set smart goals and plan accordingly, we've really dug into. But, we typically get pretty vague answers. Like, it's like telecoms forecast, how much reliability is there? And that it's like, I mean, stick your finger up in the air, feel the lead. Um, but yeah, I think it looks promising. We do have one of our top three customers is actually for the past year been trying to bring in their manufacturing in house. So that'll be a $2 million customer that we're trying to replace, but they've been falling on their face every step of the way so far. So I think that'll still be around. But we would expect the data center. I mean, we're going to try and ride this data center wave. We've got enough diversity that I think we can take on a substantial amount of that without being exposed too much in terms of a downturn. And I think that runway is going to be pretty long. So we look to have a better year than we did this year for sure.
Yeah, that's a common theme throughout. I hear about the data center. It's like a diversified stock portfolio, investment stock portfolio. You want about 10. How much percent did you want in semiconductors? How much you want in data centers? And then try not to let it grow too big. But if you don't have it, you're leaving money off on the table because there's amazing
Yep.
opportunity to grow and reinvest in your business from all the cash coming into this industry, which it's immense. And I find it interesting because I started reporting on this industry back in the 90s during the telecom boom. And I remember going to shops. That's when the CO2 laser, look, we got the CO2 laser. Isn't this cool? Or we got this old style punch laser, which I saw a few of with the strippets, that was taken on with the telecom boom. And it was so new that 80-90% telecom, most of these shops. And
That was us. 2000 was a rough year.
it's right.
60% sales down
Right, right,
overnight.
and so this time around, it seems a bit more nuanced and not quite as dramatic of a drop. And who knows? I mean, nobody has a crystal ball, and everybody's looking at the vendor financing and circular finance that seems to be going on in AI. But the bottom line is the server racks are real, at least. We're dealing with actual concrete things with an absolute. We know the business model in Metal Fab, so no problem there. We can make money on it now. So
Yeah, the tough part's meeting the demand. I mean, it's just they need, they've created somebody up top's created this fake deadline and they've written into their contract, LDs where people are going to be paying tons of money if that data center's up and running by that certain date, and then everything rolls downhill. And so the good thing about that is less price sensitivity and more opportunity for Caleb. But it's a challenge for sure.
yeah, and I did want to mention, yeah, less price sensitivity. We see that we've actually gotten some preliminary data from our financial ratios survey that's coming up. And yeah, I mean, you see wide ranges of EBITDA out there because there's less price sensitivity in that market because they say we need it now, and there's all sorts of
Hmm.
opportunity there. And but then again, most shops are like, yep, when's this party going to end? We'll see, but we're going to do it
Yeah.
smartly. So, Caleb, so yeah, 2026. What do you think? What's your crystal ball look like?
Well, usually we see a decrease in demand in November, December, but we're not seeing that this year. In fact, we're just seeing more daily volume, and so that makes me pretty bullish on going into 2026. Um, as far as as far as supporting that growth, we've got more lasers in the queue. We're probably getting more press brakes, more finishing equipment. That'll help us with breakdowns. More machines mean when a machine breaks down, it has less impact on total capacity. So I think possibly by the end of next year, we'll have 5 flatbed lasers in this facility, possibly 2 tube lasers, up to 7 press brakes. We might go toward a panel bender to support some of the like enclosure and other parts that actually work great on a panel bender and the hard on a press brake. So we'll see. As far as new services go, we have some new things in the works right now that are kind of secret, but we always tend to look at opportunities and just kind of gauge the marketplace. Like, how hard is it to order this kind of stuff? Can we offer a differentiated customer experience? And then we'll preferentially pick the things where we can offer a better customer experience from
You
a rapid turnaround perspective, especially.
Yeah, you mentioned tube tooling, yeah, for your tube bender. So you have tube bending capability in house now?
Yeah, we have a CNC mandrel tube bender. We've kind of soft launched that, just a handful of alpha customers, and we're working on the software for that as well, so that we can instant price it, do instant manufacturability checks, and then promise, rapid turnarounds just like we do with sheet metal, but with tube bending. So
Wow,
Wow, so
that's
you'd
crazy.
have a simulation online just like you'd have with bending. So people would upload the tube and say, all right, this is how it's going to bend on the mandrel.
yep. So our software already, you can upload a bent tube, and our system will look at it and unfold it, just kind of like it does with sheet metal, and automatically provide or do the compensation for stretching and spring back and everything that you get. And then it rebends it in your web browser on the machine, and you can watch it happen. And if it can't be bent, you'll see it and you'll see why, just like with sheet metal bending.
Wow. Now the question is, but the tooling for that, my goodness. I mean, it's like you've got, the variety of tooling that you'll need. But I guess as long as what you have, it'll be all mandrel bend or you don't need mandrels or a combination of both.
Mandrels when it's needed to prevent wrinkling and collapse of the tube, which will be a lot of the time. We were actually, I mean, we entered this knowing basically nothing practically about tube bending, and we were surprised to find out that like mandrels wear out real fast. Like a bronze mandrel might wear out in like a day at the volumes we expect to do. And then like just working with the manufacturer of the tube, just to get of the tube bender to get more mandrels, it's like, okay, well, it's a month to 3 months lead to get a new mandrel. So we can wear out a mandrel in a day, and it takes 3 months to get a new one potentially. Actually crazy. Like, I don't know how anybody operates in this marketplace, and we might be missing something. We found another company that might be able to provide mandrels in a month. But still, that's, a month for a part that can wear out in a day. So that's why I've looked seriously about tooling up internally to make tooling. It's just wild. And that's to say nothing of the actual dies and clamps that you need to perform the draw bending. So I think we're going to literally be spending millions of dollars on tooling just to span the space well.
Right.
All the different things that people need.
Yeah. So yeah, you mentioned tube bending with you rotary draw bender. Do you have one? Is it a single stack or is it double stack where they have, you actually have two diameters per tool with triple, you have triple, quadruple, whatever. I'm just kind of curious because the variety you have. That's what's curious, is that to match tube bending to that high mix model. That's very interesting.
Yeah, so it's a right left tube bender, servo driven, and I think it can support up to 4 tools on each side. So yeah, so it should give us some flexibility, and we'll probably standardize around a couple standard bend radii, centerline bend radii, um, and then we'll also offer push bending as well. But it'll be interesting. I know there's some challenges to like when you change the tools. Sometimes it can be fiddly to make sure that you get everything right. And with sheet metal, we're doing over 3,000 unique SKUs per week. So anticipating lots of tool changes for tube bending might be a little challenging, um, because of just the time it takes to change tools. So we might end up with just like dozens of machines just so we don't have to change tools all the time. Um, but we'll see. I'm really excited about it because the kind of work that we're optimized for, this like high mix, low volume, thousands of parts, quantity of one. It's the kind of stuff that if you go out in the marketplace today, you have a really, really hard time finding a company that'll do it for you at all. Um, yeah, even bidding on it, and we've had our own customers who have expressed that and frustration with that, and it's for good reason. I mean, it's really just hard to do a one-off on a bent tube. But I think we can solve it, even if it means buying tons of machines. And I think it's going to be this net lift for the whole marketplace, for the whole industry, or for anything that needs tube bending, because it's kind of this inaccessible technology unless you're on this short list of customers that need high volumes. And if all of a sudden everybody can order bent tube, then people will design for it. And as people design for it, there's just more products. And then as those products go to production, then there's opportunity for every kind of shop that just wasn't there before. I think that's happened with sheet metal in a lot of ways and continues to happen, but we're going to do it with tube. And I'm really excited about that.
So did you have customers that sounded like that needed it? I mean, that's a big leap. I'm so interested in how, it's always a chicken and the egg with that type of technology. So were you able to like just, in question enough customers and get enough demand from your existing customers that you were able to justify this big jump?
So the moment we started offering tube cutting, people came out of the woodwork asking if we could do bending as well. And there's a few niche markets that really use tube bending heavily. And it mostly came from those, but I believe that accessibility creates demand. So, if you can't design for tube and reasonably prototype on a good pace, then engineers will just generally not do it.
That's right.
So I kind of look at it as like a net new, like we will create new markets by making it accessible. And also the fact that we have, tens of thousands of customers that use our site regularly means that when we launch a new service, it just has instant marketing exposure. So we can kind of create some demand for these new capabilities.
That was my next question, was how you were going to market that. Because I'm like, how are these people even going to know? That's interesting. That's amazing.
Yeah, so we can get in front of the right people through trade shows and influencers and so on. We, of course, run digital ads and social media ads. And then, of course, it's just immediately exposed to everybody who visits our website to place an order. And there's a lot of those people. So, yeah.
That's so cool. And the potential about that is, I mean, this is just me riffing from previous interviews I've had from tube bending manufacturers and tube bending suppliers and all this. They especially since just with Zoom calls, they share their screen, they show, okay, this is how you can redesign in tube. So we've done redesign in tube articles for years on the Fabricator. Just ever since tube laser cutting came to the fore, and then bending as well. And so there was an article we wrote last year was about, okay, how about this kind of cut that would make bending easier and you can and facilitate the tooling. And he brought me through his thought process of digitizing. Hey, this is a sheet metal part that was formed, but no, now we're going to cut it in tube, bend one on the very simple tube bending, and boom, it's done. And to have that kind of simulation to say, hey, how about this? Could you change it to this and say, what if this is, we could save you this if you did redesign this way. I'm not sure how much that could be pushed within your model, but it's just an interesting paradigm, because it's like, those are the kind of thought processes that engineers are going through. Like, hey, can I redesign this? But always the challenge is, can I find that supplier that can actually make it for me? So that's very cool. Very, very cool.
We're in the home stretches on the software. We had some software demos just this week.
But there's a lot of potential there, and I think there's been so much market friction with tube bending because of the limited supplier base, and especially how much people can do in low volume. Now to shift gears totally here, but Yeah, just kind of wanted to get into the weeds about how y'all put together a strategy, an overarching strategy, and what you can plan for, what you can't. And Caleb, I'll start with you with this. You obviously wrote this year about, in the magazine about you had a down machine, you had kind of black swan events within the OSH cut universe, obviously, and just kind of bring us through how you dealt with that and how it shapes your kind of overarching, all right, what can I plan for, what can I plan for, and how do I learn from that? Or is it just that's reality, that's the name of the game?
Yeah, that is a great question. So first of all, the thing that jumps to mind first of all is that, like, what can you plan for? You can plan for a recession. They will happen. They always happen. They have happened. Um, I mean, go through history and it happens a lot, like at least every decade. And a lot of people are saying that there's one on the horizon, maybe within the next couple of years, and certainly within the early 2030s, I think. So as you think about growth and leverage, just imagine what happens if suddenly your revenue drops 20% or 30% or 50%, because it's happened before, it'll happen again. And I ask myself, well, am I willing to leverage for growth in a way that would cause us to go out of business when that next big recession hits? And the answer is no. I will actually deliberately slow growth if I'm not comfortable with the leverage that would be required to tool up. And that means that, we'll probably have competitors who sprint ahead of us, but that's fine because in our space, customers have tons of mobility. And if we arrive a little bit later with a fortress balance sheet, then we'll have tons of optionality and customers will be willing to switch. And that suits us just fine. Like machines break down. I mean, I didn't think we would lose 3 of our 5 lasers for a month. But ordinarily, you think, well, you have a lot of lasers, then it's less likely that you're going to lose a bunch. But yeah, that can be rough, especially when you try to promise turnaround. But the thing that we've done to try to minimize the impact of some of that equipment down is we don't run a swing shift. We run a day shift and a night shift. And then if we lose equipment, we'll shift labor to a swing shift so that they can continue running the machines that we do have. And that helped a lot, actually. Lance, when you sent us that job, we were running a full swing shift to try to keep our final 2 lasers running correctly for as long as we could till we got the machines back up and running.
Those are some great insights. Kind of dive into that for me as far as how, why did the swing shift present issues with that? Is that simply because if you're just first and second shift, that it's just building in, you just don't plan out you reduce your available capacity, saying, all right, we're going to make sure that we don't promise to this volume. Is that what you're saying?
Oh, well, if we were running 24/7 and then a laser went down, then you have no options. And it would be way more capital efficient to do that. But as an on-demand shop, we need to be able to turn stuff around even if a machine breaks down. So we say, okay, well, we'll have more lasers, but we'll run them 2 shifts instead of 3. And then if a laser breaks down and we need the capacity, then we can shift people to a swing shift and we reclaim all of that lost capacity by virtue of having more hours in the day. So it's just kind of a way to say we're not going to operate at peak all the time. And we're going to give ourselves a buffer that we can work with logistically if a machine breaks.
Gotcha.
So what does that look like practically on like with so you have, what are your shifts and then what are you asking the people to do?
So our day shift runs from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. Our night shift runs 10-hour shifts from 10 p.m. to 8 a.m. And they're off on Fridays. And then when we need a swing shift, we take people from days and usually have them work slightly overlapping from 2 p.m. to 10 p.m. So they're getting that 8-hour swing with a 2-hour overlap with day shift. And that helps too, because 2 to 4 is kind of crunch time on shipping to get stuff out the door on time to actually leave that day. So when we have machine down, need to split out a swing, we ask for volunteers, and usually we'll get enough people to keep the lasers running, which is the whole point. If that's what's down, or the brakes running, if the brakes are down. And usually people are pretty eager to do that because we do a higher shift differential for swing shift compared to night shift.
Awesome.
That's awesome. So Lance, yeah, kind of following up with that. So what's kind of your building blocks for strategy to make kind of make everything more resilient and able to be agile to shift to black swans that may happen.
Yeah, great question. I mean, for us, right now, I mean, our big, thing is figuring out right now, like when we get a big work order in, like Caleb, the order that we outsource to them, programming, we run pretty lean in programming, and then which is fun because we're a production facility. It's mostly repeat production jobs, and so we really need to optimize programming. And so starting with that, and then our ERP system is limited on our scheduling. I don't know that there's any perfect scheduling software out there. Right now we are building, we're using a off the shelf product that has AI built into it that we're going to be building and testing out our own scheduling software. I won't mention any brand names, but that's the route we're going. And so that will hopefully give us a little bit more runway on our ERP system. But the more I'm digging into it, the more expedited I'm feeling that we need to make that change. And that's a massive change that nobody wants to go through. So trying to carve out enough, capacity and in terms of mental capacity and man hours in the office space to be able to make a change like that in the next 12 to 18 months. But yeah, I mean, a lot of the things for us in terms of like planning for downtime and stuff, I mean, it goes back to like the more you're dependent on lights out manufacturing and to Caleb's point around the clock, if you're running multiple shifts, our model is we have a flex kind of one shift and then a skeleton second. We're trying to right now build up a second shift because historically we've just depended on lights out manufacturing. And what we've seen is that sounds great, but you get a tip up and now you counted on running all night and you got 2 hours or 1 hour of runtime. And fortunately, our laser operators we got cameras on it. You can see it from home and come back up here, and we've been incentivizing to do so to get it back going. But that's going to be our focus, is for our focus right now moving into Q1 is building some really skilled trades on second shift. It's just hard. I mean, people don't want to work second shift. We've never had any trouble hiring. And I've always said, like, I walk out on the floor, tell people we've got an opening, and I have somebody applying within 24 hours, if not the same day. And so, but second shift's a different animal, especially when you find skilled people. And then if you have openings on first, they're all going to want first. That's what we're focusing on right now, is just building that redundancy so we're not so dependent on, lights out manufacturing capabilities. And there's some things you can't do, like welding and assembly, paint, you can't, powder coating, you can somewhat, I guess, not fully automated. But we have a batch system, so we don't even have a line. So yeah, just building out those manual processes and then having some skilled people that can essentially walk a job through the shop, so that we can be able to have a little bit quicker turn times as needed, and have more flexibility so that we're not so dependent. Right now, I'd say we're too dependent on being able to run unattended, and we just can't get the OEE we want to see on lights out like we thought we could get.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, actually, this morning I had a chat with a laser operator in Canada about a decade ago, and he's a great guy. And he brought us through some of those fundamental steps of, all right, a qualified laser operator, what does he check when he gets in the morning? He inspects the slats. He communicates with the programming team. He looks at the micro tabs on the nest, say, all right, is this good? Is anything going to, bow up? Is the orifice totally round on the nozzle? Tape shots, all that kind of stuff. Those are old school things to do that you don't do them all anymore with advanced technology, but they're kind of the fundamentals that we're kind of reviewing. You got to set it up because it's like, all right, you got to have that kerf width for automation. Do you guys have part picking automation as well, or is it just towers?
Not yet. Yeah, we're still it's tabbing in.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then it's like, what do you tab it in more and better for lights out, and then you get more handling time and more of a burden. Your burden just shifts. You get more deburr time. So we typically don't program it for just lights out, which is maybe why we're not seeing the OE that we'd like to see. On the lights out capabilities. But knowing exactly which jobs, there's some obvious we know we're going to run lights out, and we plan accordingly. But you can't do that all the time. So and it just creates more labor in the when you get there the next morning. So we're really trying to get away from that. The single part picking lasers, I love. That's a game changer. Looking for right now, one thing, actually, another initiative that we're working on is automated storage. That's part of what we went to Fab Tech with to look for, and not just automated storage, but more compact, so that we can have less racks in our facility. So I'm trying to clear up enough space to be able to add another laser or laser punch combo, probably the latter. But in order to do that, we need to get rid of some of our material storage space. So we've got too much, and so we're looking that'll be something we'll be activating on next year, is reducing our material storage footprint through some automated solutions.
And this is kind of a plug for next month's coverage, and it's actually going to be in December. But this fabricator, I don't know if you ever heard of Tosec. It's out of the Netherlands. So it's this large fabricator out of the Netherlands that actually launched an automation company of their own. And so they have their own part stacking solution. They have their own towers. They built their own. And then now of course they're marketing it, and that's why they were very happy to talk to me, obviously. But but they have it's an interesting story. It actually started in South Africa, where it was a huge tube fabricator in South Africa. Guy flew back he was from the Netherlands, went to South Africa, came back to the Netherlands, purchased Tosec and purchased another German job shop. And began expanding into really neat kinds of automation. And on the cover of the magazine, you'll see next month, you'll see a robot arm with a right angle grinder on the end effector. Just a manual tool. They actually automate with manual tools as end effectors, and they have adapted that to do automated deburring. It's very fascinating, but
Wow.
it's the kind of thing where it's that kind of big picture thinking that they say, hey, how are we going to get this flow throughout the entire shop? It was all based on what Tosec, the challenges Tosec was having, and then they grew from there. So it's an interesting story about where metal fabrication can grow. There's no one way to grow a metal fabricator, and now they're a family of companies of disparate kinds of businesses that are extraordinarily successful in Northern Europe. And it's like, wow, that's something neat. That's kind of the story we're telling.
Can't wait to read it.
Yeah. So, but anyway, yeah. And also wanted to riff too on there. You had mentioned, scheduling issues. There's one shop that I'm pursuing this for next year. We'll see if I can do it. But this is a lead from a lead saying, hey, you got to talk to this guy and talk to this guy. This guy's doing this, and so this is total hearsay, typical podcast, total hearsay about what I'm going to say. But but he was having he built off the shelf sensors for not much money, and developed his own IIoT system and coordinated that directly with his scheduling system. And just so in other words, he would get OEE numbers that were very accurate. The clock, and we compare that with clock in and clock out numbers from the ERP. So like, for instance, on a break, it's the typical story with the IoT. It's like on a press brake cell, the part comes in, you click on MES or ERP, clock in, but then there's a bunch of stuff that happens. And then you clock out. But okay, how often was the RAM moving? When was the RAM on the brake moving? Well, IoT kind of uncovers that, saying this is your green light on time on the RAM of the brake. And this is how much is for tryout, and this is how much is for actual production, and this is how much it was for good parts. Because you want to maximize the green light uptime for good parts. And the system was kind of vibe coded from that, he said. We shall see. I'm not sure, but that's total hearsay. But even if it's not true, it's a worthy idea to plant out there, because I think it's interesting. So,
Yeah, that's really cool. I can't wait to hear about that.
we're heading toward the end here, but Caleb, any last thoughts on 2026? Where do you think we'll be this time next year?
Wow, that's a good question, Tim. Man, I wish I had a crystal ball. I thought I had one once. I probably wrote about it in one of my articles over the past 2 years, but I was wrong in some pretty major ways. So I've always been this. I'm an electrical engineer by training, and I moved into fab late in my career, and I was so obsessed with data modeling, and I had this model that let me tie ad spend to customer acquisitions. Had a customer behavior model that built on top of that said this is the average order size, this is the attrition rate month to month, this is how often they order, and then I had models for like impact of new services and other stuff. And I ran with that sucker for 5 years, and it was a crystal ball. I could just predict exactly what was going to happen. But the problem was put me in this false sense of security that said, you're on model, so everything's fine. But actually, it didn't capture what would happen when we, made our services better and developed a mature marketing function in the company and ramped our ad spend and did all this stuff. Like what happened this year, it totally broke my model in the best possible way. But I should have been just really aggressive about distribution and marketing from the get-go, from day one, instead of waiting 6 years and obsessing over building this predictive model that could tell me. Um, all this is a really long, circuitous answer to your question, Tim. I have no idea what the future holds. I wish I did. I used to think I did, but it was the worst kind of knowledge, the kind that makes you complacent. So over the course of the next year, I want to break more models. I want to change the status quo more often for the better. So that's kind of where I'm at looking into the next year.
Yeah, I think it's a mix of, just to be cheesy, but when I was growing up, I love the movie City Slickers, just because I kept thinking about what was his name? I forget the actor's name, but the not Billy Crystal, but the old guy. I forget his name. He was like old time cowboy. And it's like, what's your secret, Willie? Why how have you kept on all these years? And he said, one thing. That was this thing, one thing, that focus on the one thing. And I've always interpreted that as the next step. What's next? And it's like, all right, you have your wide angle lens because you can't operate with blinders, but you also just like, what's next? Otherwise you'll have analysis paralysis and get drowned in data that steers you in the wrong direction. So, guys, thank you so much for your time. As always, it's been a pleasure. And we'll continue the conversation next time, hopefully with Cody Lee as well. And thanks so much. Have a great new year to everyone. And we'll see you next time.
See you, Tim.
Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
The Next-Gen Metal Fab podcast is a production of Fabricators and Manufacturers Association and part of the FMA Podcast Network. The show is hosted by Tim Heston and Caleb Chamberlain. The podcast is produced and edited by Garrett Slager and Dana Weicker. Additional production support by Dan Davis, Andy Flando, Mike Owens, Billy Culpa, Elizabeth Gavin, and me, Sarah Spring. Thank you for listening.
That's very cool. Very, very cool.